దూర విద్యా విధానంలో డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ దేశంలోనే మొట్టమొదటి సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం. దాదాపు 2.5 దశాబ్దాలుగా దూర విద్యా విధానం ద్వారా కంప్యూటర్ కోర్సును అనుసంధానం చేస్తూ BA, BCom, BSc డిగ్రీ కోర్సులను అందిస్తోంది. పోస్ట్ గ్రాడ్యుయేషన్ స్థాయి, డిగ్రీ, డిప్లొమా స్థాయి కోర్సులను ఔత్సాహికులైన విద్యార్థులకు అందిస్తోంది. డెవలప్మెంట్ స్టడీస్లో సెంటర్ ఫర్ ఎకనామిక్స్ అండ్ సోషల్ స్టడీస్ ద్వారా MPhil, PhDతో పాటు విశ్వవిద్యాలయమే స్వయంగా దూర విద్యా విధాన అంశంపైన PhD వంటి పరిశోధన కోర్సులు ప్రవేశపెట్టింది. సుమారు 4.5 లక్షల మంది విద్యార్థులు ఈ విశ్వవిద్యాలయం నుంచి ఉన్నత విద్యావకాశాలు పొందుతున్నారు. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం స్థానికంగా స్వయం బోధనా పద్ధతిలో ముద్రణ రూపంలో రూపొందించిన కోర్స్ మెటీరియల్ అందిస్తోంది. కోర్స్ మెటీరియల్ అధ్యయనానికి సహకరించే విధంగా రేడియో, టెలివిజన్ పాఠ్యాంశాల ఆధారంగా కార్యక్రమాలు ప్రసారం చేస్తోంది. అధ్యయన కేంద్రాల ద్వారా ఏర్పాటు చేసే సలహా సంసర్గ తరగతులు, సైన్స్ ప్రాక్టికల్ సౌకర్యాలు విద్యార్థులకు స్వయం అధ్యయనానికి ఒక చక్కటి అవకాశం. ఇవి విద్యార్థి సమీపంలో ఉండే అధ్యయన కేంద్రం నుంచే పొందొచ్చు.
Hello viewers, a very good afternoon to you all and welcome to the teleconference program of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Business environment and its impact on the functioning of an organization. This is the topic for today's session. But before we start discussion on this set topic, I have a small announcement for you. I am happy to inform you that the Department of Business Management of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University started 2-year online MBA program from 2014-15 academic year, that is from this academic year. Both executives as well as fresh graduates, they are eligible to seek admission into the program. This is a 2-year program, runs through semester mode. In addition to the 3 important specialization areas, that is finance, marketing and HR, we are offering another specialization, that is operations, for the sake of the students. And as the program is completely online, here the student need not attend the classes, the contact classes physically. The lecture notes, video lessons, everything will be uploaded in the web portals. You can just read the lessons and also watch the video programs, that is the video lessons, whenever you have time. So, the main intention behind launching this program is the student can study, can read at his own pace and also place wherever you are, whether you are at home or if you have some leisure time at your workplace also, you can just read the lessons or watch the video lessons also. And the student can also have an access to this audiovisual digital content on mobile phones also. Then you may get a doubt how to seek clarification if you have any doubt on the subject related issues. You can interact with well experienced faculty with the help of emails and also charts. You can chat with the resource persons. For every course, virtual classes will also be organized. 2-3 virtual classes will be organized. These virtual classes will be announced well in advance for the sake of the student, so that you can log in and you can hear the lecture and you can seek clarification for all your doubts and questions. And this is completely online program. The assignments and also the examinations will be conducted online only. And to seek admission into the program, the candidate has to appear for entrance test. The last date for registering online, this also online registration only. So, the last date for registering online to appear for entrance test to seek admission into 2-year online MBA program of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University is 17th December. Entrance test will be conducted on 4 different dates. For the convenience of the students, we decided to conduct entrance test on 4 different dates, that is on 20th, 21st, 27th and 28th. You can choose whatever date that is convenient to you and also the place where you want to appear for entrance test. For full details of the program, you please can refer the websites, that is www.brau.ac.in, and another website is www.eprograms.brau.ac.in. I just repeat the website addresses: www.brau.ac.in, and another website is www.eprograms.brau.ac.in. 17th December is the last date for registration to appear for entrance test, and you can also send an SMS to the number 56767 as BRAOU. Say BRAOU and give an SMS to 56767, so that you will also get response from the concerned officers. So, this is an announcement about online MBA program. Now, coming to the session. As I told just now, business environment and its impact on the functioning of an organization is today's session. This session is meant mainly for our second year MBA students because they have a full course on business environment. Understanding the environment in which the organizations have to operate is very important and essential to the business units, because various environmental factors, they influence the business organizations in different ways. To do everything, that is actually what the nature of the product to be produced, or what are the changes or modifications for the products or services they are offering, what are the modifications that have to be done by the organizations, from where to operate, that is the location or the place, the price actually they have to charge, and various other policies of the organization, all they will get influenced by various environmental factors. That is why knowing and understanding all these environmental factors is very, very essential. What is business environment? In a very broad way, business environment is nothing else but a sum total of both external and internal factors or components that influence the organizations. So, from this we can say that the business environment is broadly categorized into external environment and internal environment. All the factors that exist or function from outside the organization and influence the functioning of the organization, that is known as external factors, maybe the political factors, technological, legal and all these things, they come under the category of external factors. And the forces that function within the organization, stay within the organization and influence the functioning of the organization, that is known as internal environment. Maybe the shareholders, the board of directors, the employees, the policies of the organization, all these come under the category of internal environment. The organization has either full control or control to some extent on the internal environment, whereas they do not have any control over the external environment. A very close and continuous interaction between the organization and the environment is essential. Then only the organization will know what are the changes that are taking place in the environment. So, what is the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and all threats of the organization, and then designing the strategies accordingly. Then only the organization can sustain in this competitive world. So, to enlighten us more about the environment, business environment, what are the various components of environment and what are the factors in each of these components and of, how they are going to influence the organizations, we have two eminent resource persons with us today. But today we are confining our discussion to discuss about external environment only, but not internal environment. So, let me take the opportunity to introduce the resource persons of today's session. On my immediate left is Professor K.V. Achalapathi. Professor Achalapathi is working in the Department of Commerce of Osmania University. Sir has a very rich experience, 35 years of teaching experience. He traveled very widely, various countries. He visited various countries like USA, Paris, London, Africa, Middle East countries, etc. There is a very big list of the countries visited by him on both academic assignment as well as teaching. At present, Professor K.V. Achalapathi is Directorate of Placement Services, Osmania University, Hyderabad. And next to him is Professor K. Narendranath Menon. He is a retired professor from the Department of Business Management, Osmania University, and at present he is senior faculty member of Institute of Public Enterprise. So, he too has very rich experience, and he is now working on different projects also, which are really very useful for our present day society. So, we will take almost a 40 minutes time for discussion sake, and after that, if you have any doubts on the topic of today's session, that is business environment confined to external environment and its impact on the functioning of organization, you can just call on the numbers which are going to announce now and seek clarification. The phone numbers are 040-2703-1431, 2703-1432 and 2703-1433. So, at the outset, sir, let me thank both of you for sparing your valuable time and for being with us today, for enlightening our viewers, particularly the student community, about our the set topic. My first question goes to Professor Achalapathi garu. So, sir, what is business environment? What in my intro I have given is a very brief concept introduction. So, what is business environment and what are its components?
Yeah, I am very happy that you have taken a relevant topic for today's discussion. The business environment normally is known as the total of external forces, of course, including internal forces, that will have impact on functioning of an organization. In fact, the relationship between the environment and the business is well explained by Peter Drucker by comparing the business with the sailing a ship. The sea allows the ship to sail. That gives an opportunity to sail a ship, and at the same time it gives a threat of cyclones. A good captain is one who can understand the psychology of the sea and then makes it success. So, I thought of quoting Peter Drucker in this regard, and what we find here is an MBA student should know why he should learn this business environment at all. An MBA student is going to be an executive once he completes his MBA in any organization. So, in an organization, the impact of external forces is inevitable. So, when we talk about it, when we say business, the business impact of environment on business can be explained through at different levels. If we take this as such, we have normally business which is explained through trade, industry and commerce. And then we have a firm, and then we have plants. Multi-plant unit if you have. At every level there is an impact of environment. If you take the industry or commerce, the industry gets this, when we say industry, we say it is a group of plants or group of plants that produce different or similar products, which either for further production or for ultimate consumption. So, when we say this as the industry, whether it is cement industry or automobile industry or whatsoever, you will have impact of government policies. Like that, if you take a firm is a unit which controls the plants, that is a legal entity, it is a ownership entity. So, if you take an example, let us say HMT. HMT Limited is a firm, but you have HMT Lamps division, HMT Trucks division, HMT Machine Tools division. These divisions can be called as plants. While HMT as a firm, we know that, but HMT Lamps industry is classified under the lamps industry, Machine Tools is classified under the Machine Tools industry, watches are classified under the watches industry. So, at different levels we have this industry impact. So, keeping this into account, when we say environment is the total external forces which have a bearing on the firm, at different levels we have this environmental impact. So, when we talk about environment, as you have rightly said, we have actually the external forces at the broader line and you have internal forces in the inner line. If you take a firm will have to do a task, it has a task. The task it has got to satisfy the customer. Customer is the first task. He has to, unless you satisfy the customer, you cannot be a successful businessman. Then you need to get a support from supplier and then distributor. Every day you have distributor, supplier and customer daily relationship. So, impact of these three forces is inevitable. Then this level is influenced by the next level, that is competition. Competition, normally we think the two firms are competition, but the competition can come at desire level competition, farm level competition, then you have product level competition and brand level competition. If somebody is doing in a chocolate business, the Nestle brand competes with Cadbury's, that is a brand level. The chocolates itself is a product which is competing with other eatables. Then you have a farm level, instead of a bakery or chocolates, biscuits, you can other eatables as such. And the desire level itself, because eating is not always for hungry, we also look for the socializing also people eat. So, we need to compete at that level. Then this also is a environment. Then you look to the next level is public environment, government supporting banks, then you have media and other activities also. You have a direct contact every day. Unless you have a good relationship, you cannot be a successful businessman. But today's topic, as we know, beyond this, how a political environment or an economic environment or a technological environment influences the business is the topic we are going to discuss today. If you take this, mostly you find that you have these external forces, some change somewhere will have a direct impact on the firm. A simple example I can quote you is, if there is a war between Iran and Iraq, then your oil gets affected, your oil exports to this country gets affected, the diesel that comes to your city will get affected. Then you are going to a petrol pump and getting the petrol gets affected. Your transportation cost will increase, your product cost will increase, your customer will not keep quiet. So, this is a direct impact of a simple one war between two countries. Like that, you have each and every component which will have an indirect impact on the firm. We have components, as you have rightly asked, we have components, normally we teach to the students in PESTL, PESTL. P for political, E for economical, then you have S for social and cultural, T for technological, and we also talk about legal environment. These environments are they will have impact on the functioning of organization. So, what is important is, an intelligent businessman should be able to scan the environment, scan the changes that are going to take place, visualize what the changes will have in impact, and whether he can grab some opportunities from elsewhere, or whether his organizational existence itself will get affected. This part has to be analyzed.
So, there is another terminology or way just come across words like micro environment, macro environment. So, what is this? Is it same as what you explained, or is there any difference?
There is not much of difference, but in the chart which I have shown, the external, the larger part is the macro environment. The macro environment are the changes that will take place beyond our control, uncontrollable. In micro environment, where we also play a significant role every day. A businessman, depending upon the level he takes up, we have to define. For example, a small organization may not be able to control the media, may not be able to control the governmental policies, may not be able to control the citizen action, etc. But a mega organization, as Philip Kotler rightly says, through mega marketing techniques, they are in a position today to play a dynamic role even in environment. So, defining a macro environment totally as a uncontrollable is also not totally correct. You, for example, if I take up the Pepsi Cola, when it wanted to enter into India, it has gate crashed through WTO. WTO brought a condition that you should, your internal organization, internal country, efficient organization in your country should have a tie up with the efficient organization in other country. Like that, they can influence the big firms will be able to influence the big public forums through which external environment also can be taken into account. So, a Reliance firm or a Adani firm will be able to play a national level environmental factors. A Pepsi may be able to play an external environment, even the global level they can play a role. So, except such firms, normally we call external environment as uncontrollable beyond the control of individual businessmen. Hence, for the school college purpose or for a student purpose, he can define that the demographic environment or the political environment or technological environment can be defined as that they are uncontrollable to the business.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. So, Professor Narendranath, economic environment is one of the most important components of the external environment. Please explain what is economic environment and how it influences the functioning of organizations.
Good afternoon, Professor Kiranmayi. Good afternoon, Professor Achalapathi. Hello to all of you over there. As all of you are aware, and as Professor Kiranmayi said at the outset, we are here this afternoon to discuss business environment. You have this book with you, and there are 4 blocks in it, there are 20 units in it, and we are here to discuss the first 6 units. At length, my good friend Professor Achalapathi has outlined what the business environment is all about. And to take Professor Kiranmayi's question, what is economic environment? I would submit that there are various forces, there are various factors which will influence every business. And as Professor Achalapathi and Professor Kiranmayi said, look, you have to continuously watch what is happening in the environment. You have to keep your ears to the ground. And unless you are monitoring, unless you are able to gauge what is happening, you will not be able to run your business successfully. So, the key economic factors, the key economic policies, the state of economic development, the economic system which might prevail in a country are the key things which we have to consider. I would therefore tell you about 5 or 6 important issues which need to be addressed when you are talking about economic environment. Let us take economic policies. You know, all business organizations, they are awaiting the announcement of 2 important policies every year, and the other 2 I shall come to later. The 2 economic policies are, one is the fiscal policy, which is announced by the finance minister every year. Everybody in the country, whether he is a businessman, whether he is a salaried person, whether she or he is a household person, everybody would be impacted. So, you need to know what are the constituents of the fiscal policy. We would be discussing this in a later episode, but essentially it talks about, do we have a progressive tax structure, a regressive tax structure, a tax structure which is iniquitous, so on and so forth. The other policy which is announced twice in a year, and of late after Mr. Raghuram Rajan came in, announced every 2nd month, they do some fine tuning, monitoring and so on, is what is called the credit policy or the monetary policy. So, all business organizations need to understand what do they have from the monetary policy. Is the government or rather the RBI pursuing a cheap money policy? Are they adopting a dear money policy? Because all these have implications on a business organization and its bottom line. So, these are 2 policies whose periodicity is greater than the other 2 policies, which are very important, and I am sure Professor Achalapathi will have something to say in the time to come. One is the industrial policy. This is announced once in 8 or 10 years. The last industrial policy was announced in 1991. And the other one is the EXIM policy, which is announced by the Commerce Minister. So, when you want to export, you are in business, you want to export, you have to find out, is there any incentive in this particular policy whereby you can avoid paying tax? Because to avoid paying tax, believe me you, it's absolutely legal. What you shouldn't be doing is evading tax. So, are there mechanisms to avoid paying tax? Having said that, I'll briefly tell you 3 other points. So, what did I say thus far? I said you have to keep a watch on the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, the trade policy and the EXIM policy. The other 2 or 3 things is, what is the GDP? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? So, if the GDP increases, the employment increases, the disposable income increases, the demand increases. So, it is what is called a virtuous circle. So, every business person has to watch out if the GDP is increasing or not. On the basis of that, he would take numerous decisions. The other thing is inflation. Are we in a situation where the inflation is under check, is it under control? Because if the prices are going through the roof, and if you are a business person, you provide certain goods and services, there won't be anybody who is demanding it. So, what is the level of inflation? One other point which I would like to talk about is human resources. Now, when you get into business, this is a very, very important factor. You might have the capital, you might have the machinery, but you might not have the human resources. Just about 3 or 4 days ago, the chairman of the Madras School of Economics, the former governor of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Rangarajan, said that every year India throws up 10 million educated people into the workforce. That's 100 lakhs. And if it goes on in this fashion, within 6 years from now, that's by 2020, you would have 47 million unemployed educated workforce. In Pakistan, it would be 19 million, and in Australia and in America, there would be an acute shortage of manpower. So, what I am trying to convey is to all those young people who are watching this particular program, if you focus on your studies, if you understand what is business environment, if you gain, let us say, considerable knowledge through both this program as well as other people who are watching this and might want to go for that online program which Professor Kiranmayi was talking about, I am sure you are having a good insurance. Maybe you will work in America or Australia. I wish you all the best for that.
Okay, thank you, sir, for enlightening our students regarding economic environment, what is fiscal policy, what is monetary policy, industrial policy and also exit policy. Now, I request Professor Achalapathi to throw some light on political environment, another important component.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Kiranmayi. In fact, I was mentioning that the uncontrollable elements include the demographic environment, political environment, economic environment. When we talk about political environment and business go together. Political environment is just like, especially MBA, a decision maker. You are going to be a decision maker in a firm. Whereas, in political environment, a politician who gets elected will be the decision maker for the entire country or entire state or for a municipal corporation or for a ward. So, a decision maker will have different influences from different people and then he takes a decision that will have impact on the firm, because the whatever he takes a decision that will have impact on business. In fact, some of the efforts made by the nation, whether it is state efforts or the central efforts, the efforts of the nation, some of the efforts of the nation which can influence the business decisions is defined as industrial policy. So, an industrial policy is also decided by the political environment. A simple example I can give you is if you want to export mangoes, earlier not less than 17 forms are to be filled. After the new government is elected, I am told only 3 forms you have to fill, that too only on online. It gets automatic. So, short circuiting the system is in the hands of the decision making willpower of the political environment. This political environment is to be understood at 2 levels, that is philosophy as well as the political stability and growth. If you take the philosophy, ours is a democratic system and we have authoritarianism system also. We have an example of Russia or China, where they have done it, what is good for the people, they have decided and then they have gone ahead to the decision making. Such things cannot be done in India, where you need to democratize, you have to involve people at every stage to take decisions. So, democratic system which we are following will also look into it. Our strength in India lies with the political stability that we have, the democratic system we have. The parties may change, the systems will not undergo change. That is a beauty of our system. Yes. And when you look into this political environment is implemented through 3 forums. You have a legislative form, you have a executive form and a judiciary form. While the legislative structure makes the law and executives will implement the law and judiciary will check whether the implementation is in accordance with the constitution or not, and press will take all the 3 link together as a communication. So, if all the 4 pillars, if they work together, it will have an impact very well. A political environment to reduce the import duty of a particular material will have impact on the cost of the product of a business firm. So, such impact will be very high. Hence, the political environment has to be scanned, and you need stability, number 1. You need law and order to be very much effective, that is necessary. A simple example we can say that the disturbances that we have had in Hyderabad, immediately many of them firms have purchased a net to protect their glass windows. So, cost of net has gone up. So, opportunity for the net business and others businesses will get affected. So, there will that is called creative destruction in the words of Alfred Toffler. It is a creative destruction. Every decision making at the top level will create opportunity for few and destruction for the others. So, it is a dynamics. Yeah. So, in this dynamics, business can play a dynamic role with the politicians at the top level, higher level, at a mega level, and also it can take the political environment as given, adapt its business to the changing environment. As I was mentioning at the beginning, a good captain is one who can understand the environment and adapts itself and does a mature business. A mature business is one who can get along with whatever may be the kind of political environment he has, he can do a good business.
So, whatever actually the changes that may take place either in economic environment or political environment mainly, they may have some chain impact and chain reaction also. They influence various other factors. Definitely. Also. So, the next important component is socio-cultural environment. Professor Menon, so what is this socio-cultural environment and how it influences the business organizations?
Well, Professor, socio-cultural environment is equally important as political environment and economic environment. Perhaps it is a little more important. I can explain this with the help of a few examples, but let me at the outset tell what is socio-economic and socio-cultural environment. Socio-cultural environment. You see, in every society, you have a certain culture, which means it boils down to they having some beliefs, they having some values, they having some principles. So, whenever a business person is entering a particular society, he must acclimatize himself to the norms and the culture of that particular society. In the absence of that, what might happen is, he might think that he has a marvelous product, but because of the way in which he packaged the product, or because of the way in which he named the product will bomb, which simply means the product will not sell. Let me give you an example. You know, if Pepsodent were to tell, look, we will give you sparkling white teeth, and if Pepsodent were to say that, let us say in Southeast Asia.
Excuse me, Professor Menon, 1 second. Yeah.
Yes, please.
It says that there is a call. Yeah, please tell me.
May I ask you a question right now?
Yeah, please.
what's the negative impact of the role played by the software engineers who are absorbed very fastly by the different companies? Correcting with the test, just give a little explanation about it, madam.
Negative impact.
Yes.
Negative impact of software engineers.
Yeah, the software engineers, you know, the technological changes have brought beautiful changes, no doubt, in our life, but the software employees technology has attracted the youth in such a manner that most of the engineering courses today are mostly technology savvy. And ultimately, you know, it is having a long term impact on the human resources, especially the fundamental sciences are ignored. As our former president and Abdul Kalam was rightly mentioning, that the fundamental sciences, if you ignore for a country like India, we are going for a visionless country, because after 20 years you will not have a scientist, you will not have a mathematician, you will not have a good social scientist, and you will not have a human values. And this you know, the technological services is a services sector, we are able to get the leverage, because the labor cost of India compared to American cost is less. That is the reason you are having outsourcing today. Most of the business firms are lying on outsourcing, and because of this outsourcing, this is a short lived one. As for a time, there is every danger that you may not have this services may not continue long unless the fundamental sciences are strongly available. Because the fundamental sciences are strong today, your technology is surviving. Application is good, but you must have production as well. So, that is a major impact we are having. The youth are getting attracted by high pay, very high salaries in technology, and ultimately leaving the country is becoming poor in future after decade.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So, if I might continue,
yes,
I was talking about Pepsodent, and I said, look, Pepsodent might guarantee that you will have sparkling white teeth, but if you push that product in that fashion in Southeast Asia, it won't sell. Now, you might ask me why it won't sell. Who wouldn't want to have sparkling white teeth? The fact of the matter is, in Southeast Asia, yellow teeth and black teeth are considered privilege and status symbol and things like that. So, if you go and offer sparkling white teeth, it's not going to sell. I'll give you another example. If you have a product, you know, products have numbers and colors and so on. All these are important when you talk about socio-cultural issues. So, if you have a product, you know, and if you name it number 7, and if you try to sell it in Kenya, and you know, in an era of globalization, people go across the world, you will not be able to sell. You are sitting in India, you are born and brought up with the notion that 7 is a marvelous number, lucky number, so on and so forth. You go to Kenya, you find nobody is prepared to buy your product, whether it is a shoe, a toothpaste, or a talcum powder, whatever it be. The other thing is color. Suppose if you have a product and if you package it and if you put a red color cover, you might find, besides the intrinsic worth of the product, because of the color of the package, a lot of people are very, very positive in Denmark about that. But in most of Africa, they associate red color with witchcraft and taboo and black magic, so on and so forth. One or two more examples I would give you. Let's take body language. You are going to another country to negotiate with the person. You should be able to decipher what is the language which he is using when he is not talking. For example, he may be nodding up and down. Now, in India and in several other countries, nodding means yes, but in a particular country, it means no. The particular country is Bulgaria, by the way. And when they shake their head from left to right, it means they are saying yes. Now, you see, very simply, as plain as the nose on your face, you got to be rooted to the ground. You must know what's happening. You must know what does a number or a color or a word mean in some country. Now, my last example, I have one or two examples, but because we have to discuss legal issues and one or two other issues, if time permits, I'll just talk about this thing called McDonald's. Everybody who is watching this program has heard of McDonald's. McDonald's came to India in 1998, and it already had a life of 40 or 50 years prior to that. Now, watch what happens. If India, you know, India is a country where we have a large number of Hindus. There might be some people who are non-vegetarians, but many people don't eat beef over here. So, if you are familiar with McDonald's products, in that burger, you know, they have that beef patties, that is what they call it, between the bread or the bun or whatever it is. They have what is called beef patties. Now, what the company did, it had to show that it was culturally sensitive. So, when it came to India, it introduced what is called chicken patties or lamb patties or fish patties, but that was not the only thing. They had several innovations. You might wonder, innovations in a fast food product. What they did was, they had a separate, you know, because they also offered products which had only vegetarian in it, like they trademarked a thing called McDonald's Tikki, if I mistake not. I don't visit these fast food companies, so I am not very familiar with this, but some Tikki is there. And you know, this has only potato stuffing in it. Now, that is innovation. And then, you know, they have a separate canteen or a place where the non-veg stuff is served or made, and a separate place where the vegetarian things are made. What this company is indicating through its practices is, it's sensitive to what's happening. Even in pricing, you can't have the same pricing policy which you adopt in America or in the Western world and so on. Indians basically are frugal. So, we have to pitch the price much lower. We could talk about one or two examples,
Yes.
madam, with the passage of time, but
Yeah.
we'll move on to some of the other issues.
Yes, sir. So, thank you very much. So, now I request Professor Achalapathi to explain more about the technological environment, another most important component, which is really having a wide impact, very influencing the business organizations in a very this way.
Yes, Professor. In fact, if I quote J.K. Galbraith, a systematic application of scientific or other organizational knowledge to the practical tasks is defined as technological environment. Okay. So, the very definition itself shows the application of knowledge. And if you do not produce knowledge and continues to apply only, then it will have a negative impact, which other one question he has asked and I have answered that. So, if you look to the technological change, what a beautiful changes that have taken place. Man has conquered the distance. Today, we have road, on road, we were traveling at 60 kilometers per hour or 80 kilometers per hour. Today, our cars are going at 120, 150 kilometers. And trains were going at 40 kilometers long back. Today, they are going at 100 kilometers or 150 kilometers. Like that, you have air and then water. Similarly, you have controlling of birth rates was done through innovation of the pill, the contraceptive pills. That has changed, revolutionary changes in the culture of the human beings. It has brought the females in from the kitchen to the the employment field, and totally society got a revolutionary change which had impact on culture as well. Then save lives, life-saving drugs. Like that, we can give good number of examples of technological changes and that have brought revolutionary changes in business. In fact, you find today the Nokia was doing the telephone business. Suddenly, the Apple and others have brought simply this smartphone. The moment the smartphone has come, the very popular Nokia leader of business itself got disappeared. And that was a big revolutionary change you find. So, it is not the technology change will bring a slow change if you think it is wrong. It can question your survival today itself. Anything may happen. So, threats also are like that, opportunities are also like that. A small firm sitting in 100 square feet is able to earn crores of rupees thanks to the revolutionary changes that are taking place. Hence, the technology changes have brought social change, and it has got a change in the high expectations of the customers. Today, customers are no more local customers. The local customers are no more national customers. They are now global customers. So, the customers have changed their outlook and business has changed. So, that has a day to day impact
And
on the
not only
business.
that, earlier to buy something we have to go to the market or a shop physically and then buy it, but because thanks to our technology, this e-business, e-commerce and all these things
Exactly.
have really are helping the customers. We can
Online.
just sit at our home and do some online shopping and everything.
That is the change, and
Yeah.
you find two guys sitting also will not be talking to each other, but both of them will be talking to the other person on the phone.
Yes.
So, that is a cultural change that also you find there.
Yes. Thank
So,
you.
there is a lot of change.
Yeah. So, Professor Menon, I request you to explain about the legal environment. What is this legal environment? How the governments or they are influencing through the acts they are passing?
Fine. Yes, Professor, there are numerous laws, and as you are well aware, even if you want to start a business, you have to comply with some legislation or the other.
Legislations.
Now, the sad part of the story in India is there are too many legislations. Not only are there too many legislations, it is difficult to understand them. And not only is it difficult to understand, people interpret it in different ways. You take, for example, a particular case, the way it is decided in a high court. In the high court, one judge will interpret it and he will give his pronouncement in a certain way. It then goes to a bench in the same high court, and they might give a verdict which is totally different from this. Then the person who has lost the case will go to the Supreme Court. There what happens, a third version or a third interpretation is given, and this person can still go for an appeal. So, he goes to a bench in the Supreme Court which might give you a totally different verdict. The point which I am trying to make is, we have too many legislations, and one of the reasons why foreigners don't come to India, because they are also trying to gauge the business
Yes.
environment in India. You have cases like Shell in India, Vodafone. These have been, a real pain, because the legal process is very cumbersome, very tortuous, and by the time you get the remedy or the decision, all business opportunities have been lost. So, what I would submit, and I would advise the students to go through the concerned study material, it could be unit 4 or 5. There are several legislations which are indicated over there. One of them is the Companies Act, which was recently amended. You have the new Companies Act 2013. Then you have the Industrial Disputes Act, because if you are thinking big, if you go on a large scale, you have so many employees. So, you need to know what is an industrial dispute, how do you resolve an industrial dispute, so on and so forth. 2 or 3 other legislations. One is the Minimum Wages Act, and then you have the Workmen's Compensation Act. So, in an organization, people might lose their hand, they may lose their life, something or the other happens, and before you have a strike or a lockout, you want to settle the matter as early as possible. So, it is necessary that every business person is conversant with the plethora of laws. As a matter of fact, the 20th Law Commission has recommended that 1065 legislations must simply be repealed. 1065. That's a mind-boggling figure,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes, yes, 1065 legislations. Okay. Sir, Professor Achalapathi, while discussing about economic environment, we just discussed about industrial policy reforms. And the latest policy was the policy announced in 1991. Of course, all these concepts, LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization, all these concepts actually were introduced at that time. So, I request you to throw more light on this industrial policy reforms. What are the reforms introduced and how they influenced and or influencing our present economy?
Yeah, you have asked a very good point that we need to, youngsters have to understand the basic philosophy behind this industrial policy. The industrial policy, actually we talk about any country's policy has to aim at 3 points. Number 1, growth. Number 2, social justice. Number 3, it should be self-sustenance. So, these 3 we take into account. Based on that philosophy, every country frames its own policy. In our country, 1935 itself, before the independence, we know that we are likely to get the independence. At that time, 3 plans were made. One was production by the masses, that is Gandhi plan, Gandhian plan. Second was production for the masses, that is wage goods model. And the third one was Bombay plan, which was heavy industry model. This was Nehru, Mahalanobis supported Mahalanobis model, Nehru's philosophy. Because Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India, he has opted for this heavy industry model, and then he has, through public sector, lot of investment was made to build the infrastructure in this country, whether it is power, whether it is key formulation like drug formulation, or whether it is irrigation projects, including industries also, coal, mines, etc. Like that, the industrial policy was oriented through public sector dominance. In 1948 and 1956 also, it was more towards public sector deciding the fate of the country, public sector influencing the decision making of the private sector, public sector playing a joint sector with the private sector, public sector assisting the private sector to come up and then develop on its own. Like that they have developed. That has made over a period a move from the consumer goods industry to the capital goods and intermediate goods industry. That is a transformation that has taken place during the Nehru time and a later part of it. But between the 1970s to 80s, mostly we have faced a problem of over focus on the social justice as well, and that has also resulted in drainage of funds also resulted, and thereby what happened is we have lost the track. We have faced a situation of stagnation with inflation. So, jobless growth, that also took place sometime. Then from 80s, then the government realized that it is not, government cannot play a role everything by itself. So, we need to privatize, we need to liberalize, we need to delicensing. So, broadbanding they started. Broadbanding means one license, earlier you had to take license for transistors, license for radios, license for every product. But now, if you take one license in, you can take more. That was the situation in 80s. From that, by 91, as you rightly said, what P.V. Narasimha Rao, our former Prime Minister, has done through with the help of Manmohan Singh, that revolutionized, where unshackled the economy, where earlier it was what can be done by private sector was defined. What they have done from 1991 is what cannot be done by the private sector only is defined. So, that is a major change that has taken place in 1991, and a revolutionary change has come where we went for globalization and the introduction of competition from other countries. There was somebody was Abid Hussain was commenting that we had a dirty shave for about 30 years. Thanks to the double-edged blades that have come from the foreign competition, we have a smooth shave today. So, like that excellent change that has taken place, and these changes have brought a consumer revolution, and consumerism also has developed, and thereby you find that the change also, if I show you the picture of the sectors, if we look the sectoral redistribution of income, the result of these things, if you look into it, the primary sector, you have earlier 53% of the income was coming from primary sector. Then you find the only 16% of the income was coming from industry sector or secondary sector, and 31% was coming from the tertiary sector. From such a situation, by 2012, today only 17% of the income comes from agriculture, whereas 75% income comes from the services sector and 8% only comes from industry sector. So, this is a big change. Then you find in employment, people depending on the primary sector was 72%. 72% of the people in this country were dependent on agriculture. From there, now it is about 50%. Then this is from 11% to 16% and 17% to 34%. The peculiarity, if you look into it, if you calculate a ratio between employment and income, it is 1:3. That means, for every 1 rupee earned in agriculture, 3 people are dependent today also. Whereas, if you take here service sector, 2.5:1, that means 2.5% rupees earned is for 1 person. So, you find a lot of income in the hands of the people who are in services sector and very less and no income in the case of the agricultural sector, that has resulted a revolutionary change in the social stratification and distribution of income. As Professor Raghuram, through the OU School of Thought, he has brought out that the plan funds are planned in such a way that they flow only to a particular sector, which create demand for the non-essential commodities, and ultimately poor remaining the poor. This has resulted a change, and social stratification, if you look into it, you have 1% of inherently rich, 4% becoming rich, 11% if you take purchasing power parity theory as the basis, 11% of this country have got purchasing power on par with average American citizens. That is the root cause for all multinational companies coming to our country. And 40% of the people are working class. 25% are the assertively poor. I called them as assertively poor because they know about their rights. They catch hold of the sarpanch, they can gherao the collector and get whatever they want, and their papers also they take care of that one. So, that they are called assertively poor, and 19% nobody cares them. All the below poverty line programs will be grabbed by this assertively poor, and actual poor remains as a poor. So, this is the social stratification, this is the impact of our industrial policy, and that is very important for the MBA students to understand, to target as such.
So, thank you very much, sir. Professor Menon, we all know that the business organizations as well as of course service organizations also, they are working in a very dynamic environment. So, what are the strategies that actually they have to design to face this challenge, and what is the role of the corporate governance in present days environment?
See, corporate governance has come to the fore for the reason that there are so many companies which are crooked, which are wicked, which are trying to make money through by hook or by crook. And we have several examples like Enron, WorldCom, Tyco, and in our own city Hyderabad we have of course Satyam Computers, which was a marvelous company at one point in time, but sadly because of ethical stance adopted, a poor ethical stance adopted by the promoter of that company had to suffer. So, corporate governance is all about, look, what are the systems we have in place in order to manage the company on a day-to-day basis. Do we have adequate independent directors? Do we have an audit committee? Do we have a nomination committee? Do we have a remuneration committee? These are some of the committees which have to be put in place by every organization in order to see that the organization is governed properly. What happened over a period of time is, because of credit analysts being corrupt, chartered accountants resorting to questionable accounting, leaders within the organization itself not exercising their prerogative to lead the company, poor stewardship in corporates, all this led to a very poor situation across the world. And as a result of that, it is not a phenomenon only in India. We need not be apologetic about that. What we observe is, even in America and in Britain, we had this thing called the Cadbury Committee. And that Cadbury Committee had,
Professor Narendranath, I am afraid the time is
as
over.
Arvind Goswami would say, we are terribly out of time.
The time is over. Of course, there are so many other aspects to be discussed, like what are the financial reforms, actually how they influence our economy and all those things, and what's the process to be followed by the organizations to analyze the environment and all these things. So, let me take this opportunity to thank both the resource persons, Professor Achalapathi and Professor Narendranath, for being with us today, participating in today's teleconference, and enlightening our viewers, students particularly regarding the topic. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.